Hi, welcome to the Wildly Satisfied Way. My name is Taylor Davis, and this is episode 2 of the Collapse and Recovery Cycle series that I'm doing during the burnout season. So, in the previous episode, I talked a little bit about how I don't want to live a life I have to recover from, and how that has become such a profound part of what Wildly Satisfied is, and how I live my life, a standard that I have. Well, in this episode, I want to talk about the pattern that I noticed that's so related to why we live in recovery, and it's called the collapse and recovery cycle. As I started diving into what was happening with me, and I'm like, why do I keep having this life where I'm recovering and I'm starting over, I'm burning it down, I'm building it back up again, because it kind of feels like I'm constantly going through deaths and rebirths, and I'm like, this doesn't really make sense, because we don't need to constantly go through deaths and rebirths. We will evolve, we will shed, we will go through seasons, yes. But if we're constantly, like 3 or 4 times a year or every 2 to 3 years, we are dying and beginning again, dying and beginning again, there is something that is not being addressed. There is something systemically in your life, in your culture, in the way that you're approaching something that is not working. Does that mean we're not going to change? No. We're going to change. Like we're going to shed. We're going to evolve and grow just like the trees do in nature. We're going to release our leaves and bloom in a different way and, go inward. But trees don't die and come back over and over and over again. The tree is still standing even in winter. Okay. So when it comes to collapse and recovery cycle, and you might find that I'm going to look at notes because there's so much to this and I do not want to forget. I don't want to forget how much over the last couple of months I have been researching this and noticing where it's coming up and how it is tied to the addiction to chaos. So the collapse and recovery cycle, when I started noticing it, I can't unsee it systemically. Personally, yes. Culturally, holy shit, it shows up so much. And by the way, the hustle culture and that just perpetuates it a ton. So the collapse recovery cycle, it usually goes like this. You're starting into something, you push yourself too hard. So even when you know it's too much, you might be like, oh yeah, but it feels normal to carry it all. It feels normal to do this. It's like, oh, but you need to push your edge. And yes, of course, push your edge a little bit, but it's like, you're actually pushing yourself off the edge. It's not, and there's no parachute. It's just cool. That's quote unquote the way you do it. So you're pushing yourself, you start to feel off, like you're tired, you're disconnected, you're not yourself. And you keep going because you don't want to drop the ball. You're like, oh, I'm doing this thing. It might even feel good for a little bit. And then it's like, it gets too much. It's like the weight just keeps piling and then there's collapse. And then the collapse happens emotionally, physically, energetically, you crash, you're done, you're burned out, you want to burn it all down. You're like, why the hell am I feeling this way? And then, you finally, you might feel functional freeze. It might be depression, whatever that collapse looks like for you. And then you finally stop. You cancel the things, you cry, you rest, you reset, you say no. And then clarity hits. The clarity comes in and suddenly it's like everything is, you're like, oh, this wasn't working. Oh, okay, it's this thing. Here's the death again, right? Collapsed, you went through it, dark night of the soul, whatever you want to call it. And then you're like, this is the lesson that I had to learn. This is the thing that I needed to do. Oh my God, yes, I knew it. Why didn't I listen earlier? And then you start to slowly nourish yourself a little bit and you're rebuilding from these lessons that you've learned. You're solidifying that foundation again. New ideas, new boundaries, new ways of life. Here's a new identity, alignment until you're running that pattern. You're doing the same thing again and then you repeat because your system only gave you permission to pause when you break. And then what's crazy is that just like anything else, if you look at why this happens, it's because the foundation is not solidified enough. When I started just paying attention to the collapse and recovery, I'm like, oh, I'm noticing this. Every 2 or 3 years, there's a collapse and recovery. I have to break down to allow myself to rest, to feel good, to build again. I have to let it be so bad before I can say, you know what, actually I'm done with this client, or I'm done with this way of life, or I don't like the way that my body feels or my body looks, because it has to get to some painful point. But I know that that's not the only way I change. because I've changed without having that crash, without having that time in my life where I'm like, oh, okay, cool. I need to burn it all down and begin again. I have made shifts because of desire, because of pleasure. And this is foundationally feminine business, feminine lifestyle, is that we move because we move because the pleasure and the desire is strong enough, not because of the pain. So I talk about this a lot in feminine business, the difference between masculine and feminine. And I'll go back to why this is important, especially for the collapse and recovery cycle. But pain makes the masculine move. They are motivated by pain and by need. And overall, like, yeah, adding more pain, and challenge and things like that, that's really great for the masculine side. But for the feminine, pain shuts us down or it pisses us off because we are literally built to withstand pain as a female-bodied individual. If we weren't, we wouldn't be able to have babies. We're built to withstand pain. So adding more pain and twisting the knife is not going to do anything. It's going to, like I said, shut us down, shame us, piss us off, hello sacred rage. And then like, we're not going to move. We're just going to shut down and we're going to get burned out. It's just going to be awful. And so that's why I always tell people, I'm like, no. Pain makes the masculine move. Desire makes the feminine move. When the desire is strong enough, the feminine will move. When we want something, when it feels free and delicious, we're like, oh yeah, okay, that's the thing that I want. We will go for it. And that's what makes beautifully, that is what makes feminine business more sustainable and not built in survival strategies. When I speak to so many women about this, the collapse and recovery cycle comes up because we have been operating in pain and survival. And even when we were excited about the thing, it only lasts for so long because we started to build it from a place of need or from a place of, oh, well, I had this pain and I don't want this pain anymore. And the pattern of the collapse and recovery cycle, like I don't know about you guys, but I'm exhausted from it. I don't want it anymore. It feels like I'm constantly having to rebuild. It feels like I am, constantly needing to just restart my life. And it feels like a waste of energy. That's just not how I operate. But it happens subtly. The collapse and recovery cycle is so subtle. It's, being addicted to chaos is a big part of it. Not allowing ourselves to rest, holding all the balls up in the air, like all at the same time, can't drop them. And, it's funny because when I think about it, when I think about how the fitness culture or wellness culture, right, talks about, oh, well, yeah, you need to like push your muscles and then you need to recover. And that's how muscles work. Absolutely. We need to challenge our muscles, but it doesn't have to be hard to work. If it's hard, it's probably hurting you. And in that challenge, yes, we do need to challenge ourselves. We need to push a little bit past our edge, but we don't need to push ourselves off the edge. And the collapse and recovery cycle happens because we're pushing way too past our capacity again and again and again. Like, it's not a one time, oh, I'm building muscle. It's, I don't have capacity for this. I cannot sustain this. I'm pushing too hard, too much, again and again and again. And then everything shatters. And usually that happens because foundationally, and we don't have systems, intuitively, we don't know how we operate. Like, there's so many things that contribute to this. But the collapse and recovery cycle, we get into that point where we're in functional freeze or depression, or like we have all these names for what happens because of it on the tail end of it, when in reality, our body is just going, enough. Like, enough. We don't operate this way. This is too much. We are pushing our capacity enough. Whereas if we operate from a place of desire and pleasure and nourishment and freedom, and we build our businesses from that perspective, but also we build our lives from that, and we go, actually, we're going to give ourselves more nourishment. I'm going to over-nourish myself so that way I'm in overflow. And when I'm in overflow, I don't have to drop my battery all the way down to 40% and then do so much to recover from it. When I was in Bali of 2024 and I made the decision, I don't want to live a life I have to recover from, and everything started burning away, I recognized how much of my life was built on recovery and I didn't realize it. So for example, I used to get massages and bodywork massages. And by the way, like, absolute best people that I have are phenomenal. But But even the way I approached massage and getting those things that are supposed to be good for me, they were replenishing the stores that were gone. They were recovering from something. They were maintenance versus overflow. And just that perspective of like, oh my God, I'm getting massages because I don't have enough energy, because I'm not taking care of myself, because I'm in recovery mode, because I'm pushing myself too much, or I'm working too much, or I'm working in the wrong way, or I'm around people who are energetically draining, or whatever it is. So now I have to get this massage to make myself feel even a little bit better, but it's only putting me up from 40% to 60%, and then it's not enough. So then I'm going to tack on all these other things. I'm going to get the supplements, and I'm going to go do cold plunge, and I'm going to do sauna, and I'm going to do, just a million other fucking things that we want to add to our list that is a recovery cycle versus a nourishment cycle. And it's all about performance. And I don't mean performance where I'm going to be talking about that a lot this season, about like, you're one way in the front end and a different way on the back end. I don't mean like that out of integrity performance. I mean the performance of like, well, I need to perform at a certain level. So I need to buy all these things because I have to constantly recover from performing at a certain level, when it's actually like, hey, maybe we can nourish ourselves a little bit differently, systemically, and approach this differently, maybe a little bit more intuitively. You can use your human design for it. You can use systems, AI, automation. Like there's so many different ways to do this, and we won't have to recover so damn much. Can we get on board with that? Can we like all decide that we're not going to be living from recovery all the time? And I know that there's so many factors that go into this. That's why I like to have cultural conversations. I always say that I don't work in the coaching industry. I work in the culture industry. I work with, psychedelic therapists, and I work with sex therapists, and I work with, dominatrixes and leadership and all these people that are on the cutting edge of changing culture, because the way we're doing it isn't working anymore. And a lot of what we have in our lives are built in recovery models. The way that we have, conversations around wages and how much we actually need to live, and the rising prices and everything, it's because so much of our system is built on recovery. And it keeps people in recovery. It keeps people in having less than they need, less than they desire, not being an overflow, because like I said previously in the episode, we have this idea, just like the Monsters and Monsters Inc., that if we scare kids, where in this case we, operate from need and pain, and we twist that, and we constantly keeping people overworked and in hustle, that's going to get us to these millions and millions of dollars inside of our business because we're selling them the solution. When actually, if we just take a page from Monsters Inc. and go, hey, when people are more satisfied, they actually spend more money. That's proven, right? Like, when people are more satisfied, they are more taken care of, they spend more money. So can we start asking each other questions and shifting around this recovery system where we're perpetuating pain? We're creating products and experiences and things like that where we twist pain, we create problems that we don't have, we make it a need, versus leaning into being like, hey, how do I get people to a point where they're not in recovery mode anymore? They're operating at a good level and they want to spend because the desire is there. Because the desire is there. Can we get there? Can we have that conversation, please? Because it's funny, because even as I'm saying this, I know that so much of this has been perpetuated because if we create problems and then we convince people these problems exist and then we create the solution for the problems, we're going to make a ton of money. And the reason why they don't want to have this conversation is because so many businesses are going to fall away. But guess what? It's already happening. The collapse and recovery cycle has collapsed and recovered so many times that the systems are breaking down. We're seeing it in life and in business and in countries, in governments. We're seeing it around the world, which is why I am such a big proponent of the satisfaction economy, which is what we are moving into. When you have businesses, entrepreneurs, you can see it everywhere, by the way. When you have business and entrepreneurs that can't figure out how to have work-life balance, And they're like, oh, no, but we're just gonna, we got to perform, we got to make that money. It's like, cool, you're not being innovative, first of all. And I'm going to talk about that in a whole other episode. You're actually probably one of the least innovative people. If you can't figure out how to have work-life balance and how to give back to your people to the point where they're not in recovery mode, you're not a genius, you're not a leader, you're actually very inefficient and probably freaking lazy. So I'm just going to put that out there. But those people who operate in that, who operate from it's going to be in need all the time and we're in recovery and let's create these problems, let's create this pain, this old scarcity, lack, just this whole fucking mindset, they're going to fall away because the satisfaction economy is coming. It's happening already. We're seeing it with the generations where they're like, hey, we're not going to go to work where we barely make enough money. And, I'm giving up so much of my time and energy, and then suddenly I have to pay for all these things that make me work even more. That is collapsing. It's collapsing. And what's great is we can rebuild for the satisfaction economy. This is also kind of the difference between convenience versus experience, and I can talk about this in a different episode as well. But, I always say convenience wins unless the experience is better. And so a lot of the businesses that were built on convenience are going to start falling away if the experience is better. So if you take care of your people, if you take care of the people in your life and you feed them well and you pay them well and they have plenty of time to spend with their families and they really get to have a satisfied life, they will show up for the business that you have tenfold. Loyalty is built. And the satisfaction economy is here whether or not you want to dive in, but you should, because otherwise it's going to burn away. You have to take care of your people. And if not, that's when rebellions happen. That's when people start protesting. Like culturally, this happens on a massive scale. Why would I still keep giving to a system that is not nourishing me? And that's the answer. That's the question and the answer to everything. That is why people are now building businesses and lifestyles that are different. That's why the collapse and recovery cycle is such a beautiful thing to notice when it's happening and be like, hey, actually, I'm going to choose a different cycle, because that's not required. The collapse and recovery cycle is not a required thing. It's just what was given to us, and you can choose a different pattern. Like that's a loop that you haven't figured out how to close yet, which is why it keeps happening, but there is another option. When I was in the collapse and recovery cycle, I realized how much I was addicted to chaos. And I didn't realize that was what it was. And I was like, what the hell do you mean? Like, I'm not addicted to chaos. Like, what are you talking about? I love peace. I want to feel peace. I had such a beautiful desire for peace. And I couldn't figure out why. It just never felt like that. And even in moments of stillness, I felt like I had to get up and do something. I had to feel busy. I had to change what I was doing. I was just addicted to chaos and I didn't realize it. And it's like, it's not about loving drama, because I was like, I don't want this drama. This feels unnecessary. When I thought about like relationships that required it, I was like, what is the point of this? Like I was someone who, and I'm not ashamed of this part of myself. I was like, this is unnecessary. We don't need to do this. So why do we keep looping in this? And it's not about shaming someone for it. It's not about anything like that. It's like, I didn't want drama in my life because it didn't create peace. And yet I attracted it. And it's because when I recognized, how I grew up, I was someone who, the chaos and that's just what I was around when I was growing up. And I was very much someone who was conditioned to be able to handle chaos. I'm not making it anybody's fault. It's just what happens. When you're around someone who is chaotic, they will naturally make you someone or condition you, especially as a child, to be someone who can handle that. And so growing up, I had to do that. Chaos, it was like control, it was adrenaline, it was proof of capacity, it was, it was about being useful and valuable and, safe inside of that urgency. I was very much like, oh yeah, I needed to be needed. Not because I wanted to be needed, but because I was told growing up, like, make yourself invaluable, make yourself needed. And then I had another parent who was in chaos. And so I kept the peace. I calmed things down. I was always the one that if there was a storm, I would be the person you turn to in a storm. And while that is a beautiful trait to have, while that is amazing as a strength to have, because I'm calm in chaos and in an emergency, I'm the one you go to, I love that about myself. I didn't realize how much that was an addiction to chaos. So while I can have that beautiful trait, it can be changed into something where I'm not attracting chaos all the time because I have better boundaries, I have systems that hold me, all of those things. And I had to realize, like, so much of my life was focused on chaos. I was the person who someone called in. I can look exactly what's happening in your business or your life, and I can go, okay, here's the 3 things you need to change. Here's where you need to focus your energy. This is specifically where you need to focus your energy to make the biggest change. And as a 4/6 splenic projector with the judgment channel and the genius freak channel in human design, it worked. And it worked really well for my business. It is like beautifully a part of me. But it can go to, the pendulum swing can go to the opposite end, where now I'm the chaos coordinator. Now I'm the person who has to emotionally regulate the people that are around me because someone else is dysregulated. And in that moment, I take on the role of, creating the calm, creating the peace, being the peace in the storm. It can turn into people abdicating leadership because I'm the person that they go to who has it all figured out. And while some of these things can seem beautiful when I say them, they can also be very dangerous. When you work with emotionally dysregulated leaders, especially emotionally dysregulated feminine leaders, you turn into the masculine presence in their business, where when they're having an emotional moment, and we're all human, we have them, but when they're dysregulated, you're who they come to soothe. And then when you no longer play that role, well, let's just say it does not work out well. When you're like, hey, I'm actually not available for this chaos anymore, people in your life fall away. When you say, hey, we can't loop like this anymore, you become a problem. But it's like, maybe you need to be that problem because maybe that's what that person needs to hear it. Maybe that person is not supposed to be around you. And that person, those situations, those jobs, whatever they are, it's an addiction to chaos that we didn't realize that we had. And so, how this showed up for me, and I have a couple of examples, so I'm going to pull them up because I'm like, it's just like it happens so much in your life that you don't realize it's happening. And so like you create urgency or take on too much, and like the collapse cycle, you go into like it overrides your needs. You solve it brilliantly and you feel needed and powerful, and then the system overloads, you crash emotionally, physically, energetically, then you finally stop, you get clarity, we talked about this earlier, and then you rebuild again. So the personal examples I had of like, I didn't realize I was living in chaos until I left it, like old living situations, client dynamics, even how I structured offers, it was only if I was on 24/7. And even if I wasn't on 24/7, like I had retainer offers. I had a very quote unquote sustainable business because I had recurring revenue all the time, but it wasn't sustainable energetically or operationally. So I would have a retainer client, which by the way is very much a retainer and like being in the person's business, week after week, day after day. It's a very generator strategy in human design, by the way. But I would have a retainer client and I'd be on their back end, and I'd be their COO, so I'd be their right hand, or their CMO, which is their chief marketing director, operator. And even when I was turned off, even when I was like, cool, I'm closing off for the day, or I would take the next day to do something else because I wasn't 24/7 in my business, I didn't live in corporate, I would still have this energy, this anxiety in me where I'm like, oh, I should go check Slack, or oh, I need to look at this. And then there'd be like a message, for example, one time, and the person wanted the answer, and I was like, oh my God, I didn't answer that right away. And there's that energy builds up and starts to create that collapse and recovery cycle. That's where I was addicted to chaos. I was addicted to chaos because I wanted to be valued and needed, and if there wasn't something to fix, or if there wasn't something to change, or if there wasn't something wrong, then was I valuable? And the answer is yes, you're still valuable. When I came back from Bali and, I made that decision of like, I don't want to live a life I have to recover from, a huge identity inside of me died because, and there was a whole identity death in like February, January, more so the end of February of 2025. And it was the fixer identity. And this fixer version of me was not because I wanted to control someone. It wasn't fixing because I thought the person was broken. It was because I saw pain and I wanted to help. And I naturally want that. This is where I mean, like, you have beautiful traits. They're not wrong for having these beautiful traits, but if they swing too far to the other side of the pendulum, they can turn into something that's toxic or something that creates more disease in your life, dysfunction in your life. And so me like, oh yeah, I know how to fix that, or yeah, I can help with that. Like, let me help you. That beautiful energy turned into, oh, well, this is the person I always go to for help. She can fix it. Oh, but I don't want her to fix me. Now I feel like she's fixing me. No, I didn't ask for that. Like, see how that can just turn so bad. So I really had to like grieve that identity. I had to be like, I don't fix things anymore. I can tell you where to operate. I can tell you what to look at. I can return to my design and what's the beautiful trend, like trait of mine where I'm like, yeah, I can still be the calm in the chaos, but I don't need to absorb your chaos. I can still be the calm in your life, but I'm not going to be, that's not going to be the only thing you come to me for. Something that people often shared with me that is like, I'm very grounding, which another human design plug. My conscious sun is gate 52, which is the mountain, it's stillness. And that is my energy. Even right now, like if you are watching this, you can look at my home and it's very much grounding energy. It's sanctuary. I've been told that over and over again. So it's not a bad thing that you have these traits. It's just, are they being swung to the opposite end where they're no longer helpful and they're actually like inhibiting you? They're just, oh yeah, creating collapse and recovery. And so another example of what this looked like in my life is that, deadlines are really great to have. And at the same time, I would always wait until right before the deadline to finish something. And I know there's I think it's like the Pareto principle. I would have to look, I can't remember. I get all those principles mixed up. But basically the amount of time you give something is the amount of time that you're going to allow it to take. And so many of us want to wait till the end of whatever it is and be like, cool, last minute, I'm going to get that paper in. I feel like I'm getting like echoes from college. It's like, oh yeah, you try to work ahead of time. You outline the thing like 2 weeks in advance, but then it doesn't really get done until like the night before. And that pressure that you have, you're like, oh, I need that. I need that to perform. That is a huge indicator of collapse and recovery. Like one of the biggest ones. We need deadlines, yes. But why is it that our system goes, oh, but if somebody else gives us a deadline, I'm going to wait till the end of that deadline. And then I'm going to use that pressure because someone else needs it from me to get it done. Versus putting our own deadlines in 2 weeks before to get that thing done, finish it, and then give yourself a little bit of time to come back to it. Maybe send it in early, because a big part of our system is addicted to chaos. Such a big part of it. And like if the only way that you get clarity, if the only way you change your life is through collapse, you're probably addicted to the chaos that creates it. Take it from me. I was very much addicted to it. And, if in the moments where you have peace, if in the moments you feel like, oh yeah, I get to take the day off, I get to rest, I get to, whatever it is, if you're like, oh, but I should be doing something, I need to do something. That's the hustle culture, the productivity culture, the collapse and recovery cycle coming in, because you're using and utilizing that energy versus using that day to nourish yourself versus resting, which helps you operate from overflow versus, still using all of your stores and your battery keeps going down and down and down. And a part of you might be like, well, Taylor, but I have a deadline and I have this to-do list and it's like, I don't have enough time in the day and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And I understand. I also have a never-ending to-do list. And that's the thing that you need to realize, is that it is never ending. The idea that once I get this done, I'll feel better. That's also a pattern that is in the collapse and recovery cycle. It's also why addiction to chaos happens. Because if you have nothing to do, if you have time where you can rest and nourish yourself, not bed rotting, not functional freeze, not, oh, I'm going to sit here and just turn the TV on and veg out and doom scroll, not anything like that. If you have time where you truly are like sitting here in peace and quiet and stillness, and you're like, ooh, what can I nourish myself with? What would feel so good today? What do I desire to feel? What would freedom feel like? If you build from that, it can feel almost dangerous, almost idealistic. And I know there are some people who are going to watch this and be like, well, it's a nice thought, Taylor, but that's not reality. Well, you're choosing a different reality. So, if you want to keep choosing that, go ahead, go calibrate yourself to that. I have recalibrated to peace, to stillness, to not looping, not emotionally dumping, to not building a business I have to recover from or a life I have to recover from. And it takes time. I'm not 1000%. It's going to take more time. But I sure as shit am not going to sit here and tell myself that that's not possible. I have opted out of that system. Because when the culture that I am standing for, that I have created, Wildly Satisfied as a brand, my life is that, hey, guess what? We can't operate in an addiction to chaos or a collapse and recovery cycle anymore if we want to be wildly satisfied, if we want to be sustainably successful. It just doesn't work. It's why we have what we call the midlife crisis or the quarter life crisis. It's because so much of our foundation was built on this and we didn't realize it in what we consume and how we create and how we show up in our life, because we just think that that's how life is. And it's not. Like, everything is made up in life. So why not make up something else that actually serves you? The collapse and recovery cycle, being addicted to chaos, our bodies physically get addicted to it. Our nervous systems do. That's why when we have times where we're like, oh, nothing's happening, our nervous system is like, let's create some chaos. Oh, I need to go do this. And then you're going to start 5 different projects and have all of them half filled. And you're like, now I got a whole list of all these different projects that I need to do. That's another subtle thing that comes in with the addiction to chaos, is that we create more chaos versus like just finishing the one thing and getting that done. When we have peace, when we have anything like that, we make problems because our brain has been so conditioned to seek problems. And it's not inherently, yes, sometimes part of us has, obviously, like as a human being, we look for problems and we look for pain and we look for where the tiger is coming out so we can survive. But that's a survival strategy. And shifting yourself out of that requires us to have different strategies, different approaches, different ways of living. And I really hope you guys can hear the birds right now outside, because I feel like they're like, yes, Taylor, tell it. Tell it how it is. Because when we live in peace, when we decide to operate from that, our body will have to go through a detox. Addiction to chaos, I call it addiction to chaos for a reason. We are addicted to that adrenaline. We're addicted to, context switching and picking up our phone and all these different things because our body is addicted to that chaos. So it will require a detox. It will not be comfortable at first. You might want to hold on to things, but once you make that declaration, like I did, I made that decision. I don't want to live a life I have to recover from. And when I held on to things, holy shit, was that painful. When you go through that detox, peace becomes your baseline, and nothing you do, you will not allow anything else to interrupt that peace. Even your own bullshit. It's just how it is. So this isn't about willpower or mindset. This isn't about something being wrong with you. It's about recognizing how that addiction to chaos can show up in your life, how you create more chaos because that was what you felt safe in, you had control in it. Recognizing that and going, oh, wow, I don't have to push through. That's actually a collapse and recovery strategy. It's not about willpower or mindset or anything like that. It's about building systems that don't require you to feel worthy or clear or collapse or recover or like anything like that. So ask yourself, what do you get out of chaos? How is that serving you? How is it giving you control over something that you feel maybe you don't have control? How is it making you feel safe? Because while this might not inherently, as I'm talking about it, chaos feel quote unquote safe, our nervous system has created a safety pattern around it. So how is that making you feel safe? And who are you without the problems? Who are you without the fixer identity? Who are you without being the person that is in the calm in the storm? You can still be peace. You can still be peace to people in the moment, but you don't have to be calm in the storm. You don't have to weather everybody else's storm. Is that serving you? If it serves you and you want to keep doing it and it doesn't cause a collapse and recovery cycle, please leave me a comment, because that's an anomaly. But we don't have to have chaos. We don't have to live in stress. In fact, everything in our systems and our culture are showing us that chaos, collapse, recovery, all of these things are not sustainable. And I'm here for sustainable, satisfying, and successful lives and businesses. We're going to lifestyle design the shit out of you and your business to be able to move through this, because burnout is a symptom. It is not a problem. So many people want to talk about the symptoms of things and then name them as if they are problems. They're not. They are the symptom of the problem. People want to talk about, I went on a rant on this the other day, and I won't go too deep into this because this episode is already very long, but I went on a rant the other day about how so many people want to focus on quote unquote problems that we have, like obesity, right? Let's just say it's obesity, or feminism. And they're like, feminism is a problem because of this. Obesity is a problem. And I'm like, no, no, no. That is the symptom of a problem. You need to go deeper into what the problem is. That is a symptom. Ask better questions and have a conversation around the actual problem, not the symptom of a problem. Same thing with drugs and addiction. Like, drugs and getting addicted to drugs is a symptom of a problem. It's not the problem itself. So there's so many are like that. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. And so it's like, what's the cost you have of living in that chaos? What's the cost? Like, name the problem. Yes, and be like, oh wow, maybe I want to operate differently. And this is where you get to lean more into your intuitive strategy, because the answer to this is not, okay, well, I'm going to collapse and recover again, and let's, spend clarifying over and over again. It's about building sustainability in your foundation of how you live your life, instead of just following what someone else is doing or the strategy that someone else has. Like, when I work with businesses, when I work with individuals, when I work, whether it's lifestyle or business or anything, I look at what systems do you have in place? What is holding you? That is an actual system, not a habit loop or habit stack, systems need to be automated somewhat, you guys, otherwise you're just using energy all the time. But side note, what are the systems that you have? What do you have to support you? What's the identity of who you are? Is your environment working for you to be able to move into that next identity? Like, oh, there's so much to this. So as you're listening to this, leave me a comment. Follow up with me on social media. Tell me what really resonated with you. What is your collapse and recovery cycle? Can we just name those publicly and be like, shit, my collapse and recovery cycle is this. Mine was the fixer. Mine was, oh my God, I had to be of value, which means I would overperform and I would overfunction. And then I would do so many things to help me recover until those things were not helping me anymore. And then I burned out, burned it all down, and began again. That was me. Welcome. But I have recovered from it. So let's try. Let's dive into this. Share with me what that looks like for you, what resonated with this episode. And then in the next episode, I'm going to talk a lot about systems, standards, support, the things that you have in place for this new identity of who you want to be. Because for my personal experience, and I'll talk a little bit about, what happened after Bali, that is what I needed to really be able to shift into a sustainable lifestyle. One that I actually feel good showing up in every day. Even when the evidence isn't there, even when everything isn't perfect, knowing that, like, wow, I feel good with myself. Like, I feel solid. I feel satisfied. I feel successful, and I know it's only getting better from here. And I feel like no matter what, I'm not going to collapse from this, because I don't collapse and recover anymore. I sink and I sustain.